something, right? All right, Henry, go.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, forgot the other two things. Always. There we go. Probably give a nice shot to the crowd there. Hey, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. This is Taste Life Nutrition Radio and Podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. Today we have Jen Cole. Is it Yunt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Danielle Cole. Yep, you got
Jen
it.
Coles. I was like, do I say that? Because I'm afraid I'm not going to pronounce it right. But anyway, she is on joining us today talking about such an important topic. Oh, really? Both of them?
Two and one.
Two. Oh, jeez. Do I need to turn the other one off?
Yes.
I don't know what I did. I skipped last week. It's like I forgot everything. It's been 5 years that we've been doing this, and there's still stuff that I mess up. Anyway, so here we go again. We have Jen with us today talking about a topic that it just seems to have spread like wildfire, and it's not a fun one, but when you know what to do about it, it's super manageable. So SIBO is the big thing today, and has been now for probably a couple of years, and just keeps getting bigger and bigger. If you haven't, I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of it by now, but some people haven't. And then of course IBS, and which I hate that term, but everybody knows what IBS is. So Jen, thanks so much.
We'll talk about that too.
Yes, I have no doubt. But thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to dig into this with you, because I mean I see it every day. It's insane, this IBS SIBO situation that's going on.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to dive into this with you.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. It's going to be really good. This is going to be one of those things that just really honestly should just be reposted and reposted and reposted, because it's everywhere. So I'm going to throw that out there. Just repost and share.
Yeah, please share.
Yeah. So, of course, though, as always, we start the show with gratitude. I fully believe gratitude can change the world. I know that today we'll be talking some about mindset. Mindset plays a role in our health, physical, mental, emotional health, and everything else, relational health, right? As always, what are you grateful for today?
Yeah, that is such a great question, and good timing for it, because I woke up this morning feeling very grateful, very thankful. For the next 2 months, I have left with my two kids at home. Both of them are moving away on the same weekend to go away to college.
What?
And so I'm just trying to dive in and take advantage of this time that I have with them both. They're, becoming adults. They're just the most amazing people, and I just want to take advantage of this time. So grateful that I have this next couple of months to enjoy them.
Oh, yeah. So fun. Amazing. So you have two kids going off at the same time. Are they twins?
Yes. Well, everyone used to think they're twins. They're very close in age.
Okay.
My older one stayed home for community college and lived at home for a bit. My youngest one actually went away to college last year, but came home for a gap semester. So I've had them both home, but looking forward to obviously, launching them into the universe so that they can grow and learn. But yeah, loving the time that I'm going to have with them for the summer.
Oh, so good. I love that. I think that for me, I'll piggyback off that a little bit as far as summer's concerned, because anybody who pays attention to this show at all knows that the sun is my happy place.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yes, it makes me super happy. We were able to spend the weekend camping last weekend in just this complete open, beautiful area of Colorado. And, it was super remote. It's my favorite thing about camping and the way that we do it, which is very remote, is we just let the dogs go, right? You let the dogs go and you run and you clean in the river and you cook and all of the things that are just, it's just outside in this, this amazing creation that God created for us. And so,
yeah.
Oh, it was so good. I'm ready to go back.
So healing. It's so healing to be out in nature like that.
It
Yeah, I was
really
in
is.
Tahoe a couple of
Mhm.
weekends ago and
Oh.
riding bikes and going on hikes
Mhm.
and going to waterfalls and getting all those good negative ions. It was great. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm I hear that for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, what we hear so often, and just a little bit of a tangent, but sometimes I just can't help but to beat this drum a little bit, because I hear it so often from clients and patients, is that we spend too much time in the sun and that we shouldn't be in the sun and the sun is dangerous and we should be afraid of it, and we have this big media, big whatever you want to call it, that has created that has made the sun our enemy. When the sun is life, we don't exist without the sun, and so many things about us don't function without the sun, right? And so of course we have to respect it, but we have to have sunlight. We have to, the skin, as much of the skin as possible needs to have sun. It's so important.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'll actually do that. I have a beautiful patio designed by my husband out back. And so during my lunch break, sometimes I'll go out there first thing in the morning, do a little Tai Chi before I start my client day. And yeah, it's just so great to like peel off the layers and get some sunshine.
Yep. It's so good. I do the same thing. You know, it's so great to have that, that before 10 a.m. sun for our circadian rhythm. And then that between 10 and 2, which is when we're going to, get out and get those rays and convert vitamin D and all of these beautiful things that the sun does for us. So finding those times, I do the same thing. That's what gets me away from my computer when I'm in my home office, is seeing the sun out there. I'm like, okay, this is my time to go out and sit in the sun and meditate and, do some praying or whatever the case may be that I'm feeling. Listening, maybe I'm just listening at that time, Yeah.
Huge. Yeah, and we actually might talk about that today, listening.
Good. Oh, I love it. Okay, so let's do this. Let's dive in. I think the first thing we need to do is talk a little bit about your history, and maybe start with what SIBO is first, and then talk about your history and how you became the SIBO coach.
Yeah, sure. So I always love this question.
Yeah.
SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And essentially what it means is there's bacteria overgrown or an imbalance in your small intestine where it shouldn't be. We know, and probably you've talked about this in depth on your show, is that we have a diverse, or we should have a diverse microbiome in our large colon. And that's where we're fermenting and breaking down further and then creating stool so that it's excreted. But
every day, hopefully, every day.
Every day, yes. Take out the trash, yes. But what happens is if there becomes some sort of imbalance or overgrowth in the small intestine. Now, that's not to say that the small intestine is 100% sterile, but its function is to further digest and assimilate nutrients, not to be fermenting things, right? And so when that's happening in the small intestine, it can cause all kinds of havoc. So inflammation, leaky gut, bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation, and the list goes on, which we might dive into as well. But we don't want an overgrowth of bacteria or bullies on the playground in our small intestine. And so that's the gist of it. And speaking of IBS, reports vary depending on which study you're looking at, but they are kind of estimating that a good 60 to 80% of people who get that generic lame diagnosis of IBS, actually have SIBO at the root of that. So very interesting connection there. And I think it's really important for people to understand when they do kind of get that diagnosis from their doctor to ask more questions, maybe get some testing, and really check in with your intuition. What is my body trying to tell me?
I think that's really smart, because there are a couple of things that I say all the time that I really want people to take to heart, and it's always ask why. It's not you have IBS, okay, and then that's all there is to it. Ask why, and even if you get a SIBO diagnosis, ask why. Right, you got to get to the foundation of the issue, the root cause, as we all say.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's so important too. And that's the other thing. A lot of people will go to their GI or to their primary care, and the first response is usually something like, eat more fiber and take probiotics. Well, if you have SIBO, that's definitely going to be a trigger for you.
Right.
And might make you feel worse. So that could be a sign that SIBO is at play if that does happen. I guess to follow up with your other question, what my story is, and kind of putting that in a nutshell, because like many of us in the functional medicine world, we have quite a personal journey, right?
Yep.
I was a preemie. I wasn't breastfed. I was sick with all kinds of crazy viruses when I was a child. Spent a lot of time in the nurse's office with a heating pad because I always had a stomach ache. I was constipated pretty much my whole childhood and teen years, leading into even adulthood, going away to college and things like that. My first taste of like asking more questions was finding out that I was lactose intolerant, so cutting that out actually kind of helped for a little while reduce some symptoms. And then at one point I had a roommate who found out she was celiac, so I started doing, asking more questions about that. I'm not celiac, but turns out I have an antibody reaction to a different wheat protein, so I cut that out. Investigating, right? And asking questions. And coming into my power sort of in my earlier 20s and kind of exploring that dynamic and how it was affecting my gut. I've always been kind of a wound tight type of person. Grew up in a military family, quite strict, not able to really express a lot of my emotions, so I also buried a lot of that, and obviously took up residence in my gut. Once I was married, I was also in a car accident early on, and that was my first taste of alternative medicine for pain management. So I started learning about acupuncture and Chinese medicine and ended up going to school for that. So that was my first diving into learning more about alternative care. And we did that for several years, and then my kids came along. I had them back to back, and that kind of threw me into a little bit of an autoimmune dynamic. And still being like a serial entrepreneur, starting different businesses, and constantly going and hustling, which I'm sure is familiar for many of your listeners here. And just living in that lifestyle, and eventually it caught up with me, and I ended up with broken heart syndrome, Takotsubo myocardiopathy.
Wow.
And my body just couldn't take the stress anymore. And then I went from years and years of constipation to chronic diarrhea. And at that time, that's when I sought out functional medicine. I found a practitioner, and she said to me, "Hey, have you ever been tested for SIBO?" And I knew through my training in traditional Chinese medicine that the meridians, the energetic meridians in the body, that the heart and the small intestine are connected, which I thought was very interesting. And so anyway, that was my whole diving into SIBO. We tested, I treated with her, I did some herbals, and then I ended up with the third type of SIBO, which is hydrogen sulfide, which has now become my expertise within the realm of SIBO. But I went through numerous GIs, and even this functional medicine practitioner eventually threw up her hands and said, "I don't know how else to help you, here's some antidepressants."
Oh no, really?
Yeah, so that was very, very frustrating for me. And as my research brain, and I like to geek out on things, I was like, you know what? I gotta find the answer to this. I'm gonna be my own best advocate. I have to figure this out for myself. Obviously, no one else is around me is available to do that. And so I put myself through functional medicine school and dove in, took several master classes regarding the microbiome and SIBO. And word started to get out that I had overcome SIBO and that I was now helping my clients do that. And so that's how I became the SIBO coach.
I love it. I want to hit on something real quick, though, that is fascinating in a really terrible way, is what you just said about even your functional medicine practitioner told you you need antidepressants for your SIBO. I mean, you're like, what?
Yeah, what?
So
and I knew intuitively that my gut was affecting my mood and my focus and all that, because of that gut-brain connection, right? But I just felt like that was just such a cop-out, and she wasn't willing to keep asking questions with me and dig a little deeper, and sometimes that happens with practitioners. They only have a certain amount of bandwidth, especially in the conventional medicine world. You get 10 minutes with somebody, right? And they're only trained so much in gut health and this connection between the brain and the gut and nutrition and all of this kind of stuff. So yes, very interesting. And also, we can talk about this, but SSRI use can be a root cause for SIBO, which I think is really interesting, right? So.
It's so true. I wish I had the name. I heard an interview over the weekend as we were going camping and coming back. What was her name? Anyway, but it was all about her journey with antidepressants and all of these antipsychotics and these drugs that have virtually no data behind them. And the fact that, because she was taking these and she didn't put two and two together, that she had these massive GI symptoms, right? So you start to go down this really terrible road of drug symptom, drug symptom, drug symptom. And that's what she did for, it was 10 or 15 years, and was suicidal 10 of those years. Like every day she's talking about wanting to commit suicide. And we think about this place where we have all of these people right now who are doing this because of the drug symptom, drug symptom, drug symptom, Anyway, it's heartbreaking, but that's why also, even if we do decide for ourselves, yes, I need to go down this SSRI path, you got to find somebody who knows what they're doing and who can help you through it and hopefully get you off of it quickly, and knowing that the side effects can be things such as GI issues, and suicidal tendencies and things like that.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I think that SSRIs and antidepressants, anxiety medications can be life-saving. So I never say, don't ever go on those, But I have seen personally in my life with family members have this compounding effect, and eventually it didn't end well for one of my family members, unfortunately. And so it's really kind of a topic that's heavy on my heart sometimes, thinking about the compounding of the pharmacy, right, going on in this country. But to your point, yes, I completely agree. They can be life-saving. They were meant to be used short-term, not for years and years upon years, right? And so having someone who's going to be mindful of that for you, who can tweak the dose when it's appropriate, but then also try to get you off of that. And again, like we're going to be talking about, getting to the root cause of why that may be happening or why you're feeling that way, whether that looks like therapy or nutrition or targeted nutrients or whatever it's going to mean for your unique body. So yeah, I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think it's important. And just to kind of put a bow on it, we've got 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut, right? So if we have GI dysfunction, we're gonna have neurotransmitter dysfunction, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, I see a lot of mood imbalance, anxiety, racing mind, things like that in my practice when the clients are coming in. Yeah. Well, it goes back to that gut-brain connection, right? Is it really the gut that's leading us? Is it the brain that's leading us? Is it a combination? It's such an important thing to understand that gut dysfunction is going to lead to cognitive dysfunction. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. I always like to tell my clients this. Your gut microbes are actually more in control than you think they are. Yeah. They're constantly communicating to your brain whether or not you feel safe or not, what's going on in your environment and all that kind of stuff. So it's really important to have a healthy balance, healthy, diversity, no bullies on the playground and things like that. Yeah.
So let's talk about diagnosis of whether you want to call it IBS or you want to call it SIBO. What do you see? A couple of things in people who are coming to you who have been the conventional medical route versus then coming to you. What do you do that is different? It's kind of a big question, but
yeah, that is a big question, but it's a good one. And this is the kind of stuff I like to talk about, right? So okay, let's just differentiate. So IBS, first of all, is a sort of a catch-all diagnosis for someone who's having like these irritable bowel syndromes or symptoms, and that can look like alternating bowels, gas, bloating, cramping, that kind of thing. And like I said, it's sort of a generic lame diagnosis in my opinion, because it's not very specific, and doctors are sort of trained just to tell you eat more fiber and take probiotics, and it's just kind of this blanket advice. SIBO is a little bit different. It does have those same sort of symptoms, right? It could be diarrhea, constipation, or alternating. It could be um, gas, bloating, cramping. It could look like heartburn as well. It could look like chronic fatigue, muscle pain, or body pain syndromes like fibromyalgia, brain fog, cognitive impairment, joint pain. For women, especially with hydrogen sulfide SIBO, vulvodynia and bladder pain would like to, I mean, we don't like to see, we often see rashes and all kinds of unexplained skin conditions and things like that. So when you're having these sort of things, ask more questions. What could be going on in my gut? You know, maybe you've got an eye twitch that won't go away, or your toe keeps, you know, getting arthritis or whatever. Ask more questions about what could be going on in your gut. Okay, now let me swing back around.
Yeah.
With SIBO, the conventional medicine approach, if you find a savvy doctor who's aware of it, or who has tested you for it and it came back positive, and let me put a caveat here, a lot of doctors actually don't know how to read the nuances of those sorts of breath tests, so it's really important to find someone who's trained.
I would love to dig into that.
Yeah.
So keep going, but I would love to dig into that a little bit.
Put that on the back burner.
Yeah.
The conventional approach to addressing SIBO, if it comes back positive on a test, is 2 weeks of rifaximin, which is kind of the gold standard antibiotic. They like to use that one because it's reported to stay only in the small intestines. It's not really systemic.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you have an even more savvy practitioner, they might combine it with other antibiotics that may be systemic and cause other problems. But it's really short-sighted in my opinion, and this is what differentiates what I do from the conventional approach. So, in the functional medicine world, we like to, look at the whole person. Where is this person coming from? What is their history? And what has been their experience so far? What is their mental state? What is their stress level? What is their sleep, their activity, their environment, etc., etc.? So those are questions that I'm asking myself when I'm looking at the person in front of me. Before I even talk about SIBO with someone, I'm asking questions like, what's up with your immune system? Because for some reason you've been tolerating this overgrowth, right? Or this infection.
Yep. And
so that's going to be at the top of the list. How can we boost your immune response? So that we can overcome something like this and also keep you from having a relapse. The other thing too that's really at the top of the list is stress management. So I work with a lot of high achieving women, CEOs, entrepreneurs, creative types. And so relatable for me, isn't it funny how we attract people that are similar to us in our practice? But that constant drive really takes a toll on your immune system for one, and puts you in that fight or flight. So when you are in that fight or flight sympathetic dominance, you aren't thinking about digestion, you aren't thinking about hormone production, you aren't thinking about sleep and elimination for that matter, and all the other things that need to be happening on a daily basis. Right. And so talking about the importance of getting you back into parasympathetic more often than not is going to be key for your healing journey. So then we start moving into like, okay, let's talk about more specifics about the gut. And I don't typically zone in on one bacteria strain because I'm thinking about the whole terrain of the gut.
Can I interrupt you just real quick? I'm sorry. I think just in case someone doesn't understand parasympathetic, parasympathetic is rest and digest. So this is where you want to be. This is where you're calm. This is where you are digesting your food and doing the normal things that your body is supposed to do, versus the sympathetic, which is like you said, the fight or flight. Your body's not going to do those things because it's focused on running, right? Blood goes to the extremities. It's focused on running and doing and going and that kind of thing. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we distinguish between those two, so we know that parasympathetic is where we want to be, most of the time, which is that calm, cool, easy, meditative, cortisol levels are normalized, all of this stuff. So, okay.
Yes, yes. And to your point, let's be practical, right? Most of us are living in a stressful environment or stressful world, and we can do our best to try to take time out, find little joy activators throughout the day that's going to reset us. And really, that's the conversation. Like, how can I do that more often?
Yep.
It's not really that practical to just tell people, oh, you need to manage your stress and get into parasympathetic.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about tools and how we can do that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm glad that you brought that up and explained the difference. So then moving into talking about the gut, right? This is also missing in the conventional medicine approach, biofilms. So it's gaining a little more popularity, and like if you're Googling and things like that, or if you're in a support group, you might hear about biofilms. But we have biofilms all over our body. I think you recently just actually talked about this the other day in one of your episodes, but or different microbiomes and things like that. And in the intestinal tract, it's not any different. We have a mucosal layer in the intestinal tract, which is normal and natural, and we need to have that there for protection. But when it gets overgrown, whether it's with parasites, candida or mold exposure, viruses, bacteria, and all this sort of stuff, or all these things, they become sort of a complex matrix. And it becomes real estate or an environment for more bacteria and things to grow. And I always give this analogy. So here's your visual. Your intestinal lining is kind of like the couch on the frat house porch. Okay, so it's been partied on. So there might be some party cups and chip crumbs and things like that. Well, rifaximin in the conventional medicine world, this antibiotic used for SIBO, comes in and sweeps off the top and picks up a few of the cups. And so you may feel some relief for a few weeks, even a few months, but there is a high rate of relapse when that is just used like that without any other kind of support. And so what happens is those crumbs and party cups, they kind of come out, they regrow because you didn't open up the cracks or pick up the cushions and clean out from that space as well. And so that's what addressing biofilm in advance, that's how that helps. You are decreasing or kind of opening, or like what I like to call stirring the pot a little bit, so that when you do use antimicrobial herbs or antibiotics, you can get access or better access to those overgrowths. And so that's something that I talk a lot about in my practice, because people will come to me and they've never even heard of that. Or they've been on 3 or 4 rounds of rifaximin and their doctor never mentioned it. And then we're addressing bacteria, right? I don't necessarily like to go kill for months on end like some practitioners, but I do try to use alternatives, because in my practice, obviously, I'm not a prescriber, but I'm using herbs and targeted nutrients to both heal the gut lining, soothe the gut lining, repair and rebuild at the same time as removing overgrowth or trying to rebalance that diversity. And then there's like a whole other conversation after that, right? We're talking about the migrating motor complex, making sure that that's regulated. Again, that's the muscle contraction system or the nervous system in the gut. Oftentimes with chronic SIBO, that gets dysregulated. And so that also can become a root cause of why you keep relapsing. And speaking of stress and being in sympathetic nervous system dominance, it turns off your migrating motor complex. Or it can ramp it up, actually, in some cases. So you could have diarrhea and urgency. Gosh, I could just ramble on. So
I know. So I'm just gonna kind of let you go. I think what I would love to talk about a little bit is testing, methane versus hydrogen, and your thoughts on testing, because I've had my thoughts on testing over the years, and I don't remember if you and I talked about this when we first talked, but would love your opinion on testing, how you test, if you're testing, and then the hydrogen and the methane, and then go from there.
Yeah. So that is such a juicy question, especially in the world of SIBO right now, because there's lots of debate going on about whether or not they are accurate. Like the breath test is accurate. The other way, obviously, that's a little more invasive is that you can go in and get an aspirate or, take a sample of your digestive juices and do a sample of that and test that to see what microbes are there. But the easiest way is to get a breath test. There are several different types of breath tests out there. And, there's kind of a prep diet that you do in advance, and then you're consuming some sort of sugar, whether that's lactulose or fructose or glucose. There's a whole debate about that as well.
Yep.
For the last several years, I was on a panel with some international SIBO treating doctors. Some names that you probably have heard of that are out there, as the sort of celebrity practitioners, and who have different programs, and we would tease this out with each other. We would share case studies, compare testing methods, really debate, which one was the best. We would have the testing company on the call with us so that we could put them on the hot seat and ask them lots of questions. And I'm really grateful for that experience.
Yeah.
I think it was absolutely great. I was the only health coach on that panel as well, so I brought a different perspective for the doctors on the panel, and so it was always a good, lively conversation. But this is kind of where I'm landing these days. So I prefer the 3-hour lactulose breath test. I find that one resonates with me the most. I know, like I said, there's a lot of debate about the glucose right now and other practitioners using that instead. I don't feel that it's as dependable, I guess you could say. There's also a new test out there called Trio Smart. That one's more popular because it tests the 3 gases, hydrogen, methane, and hydrogen sulfide. We did a lot of comparison trials with that as well in our case studies, and we found that it wasn't as dependable for picking up methane levels. So in comparison, sometimes they were a little off. And oftentimes we found that they didn't correlate with the person's symptoms, so we thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have lots of clients come to me, I did a Trio Smart with my other practitioner, can you, take a look at this? Technically, I say I can't interpret and diagnose as a health coach, but obviously I have plenty of clinical experience to do that. But like I said, I prefer the 3-hour lactulose breath test. That's only looking at hydrogen and methane though. And I'll just kind of point out, we're kind of geeking out here now, I'll just giving you some specifics, but typically a higher hydrogen level will correspond to more diarrhea. And typically, of course, nothing is written in stone here.
Yep.
And typically that higher methane level will correspond with constipation. Interestingly, there are populations around the world who have naturally high methanogens in their intestinal tract, and it's not a problem because they're not constipated. So that's part of the diagnosis criteria, is that if you have that higher methanogen level along with constipation, then you're considered, quote, intestinal methanogen overgrowth. That's what the diagnosis is now. They changed the name, they don't call it SIBO anymore. But it's all basically the same.
Right.
And then interestingly, the third category there is hydrogen sulfide. And we know that hydrogen sulfide and methane can be, adversaries. They can fight it out with each other. So you can have one and then the other one is dominant and then the other one is dominant. They can switch off. Hydrogen sulfide is unique because it has a whole different set of symptoms that come along with it. Hydrogen sulfide gas can be quite toxic to a nervous system in the body, so you definitely want to make sure you're addressing that. It also becomes more complicated if the person has a genetic SNP that impairs their sulfation pathway. Like I said, I'm totally geeking out here.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
And this is what's interesting too. So on a 3-hour lactulose breath test, say you get one from your primary care or your GI, and it comes back with a straight line or a flat line all the way across, they may tell you that that is quote unquote normal and that's negative for SIBO. But I disagree. So that is a sign that you may have hydrogen sulfide. So you want to ask that client what kind of symptoms they're having. Are they having sulfury type of gas? Is it coming up from the top or the bottom? Are they having these unexplained rashes, heart palpitations, this vulvodynia, increased anxiety, ruminating mind, all sorts of kind of like upregulated conditions, you know? And so important to ask that, because that actually happened to me when I went through a protocol for hydrogen positive SIBO with diarrhea. I did a round of herbals, like those very common herbal combinations that are on the market. Did that for a month and then retested. And the test came back flatline. And my practitioner, who was a functional medicine practitioner, said, "Oh, it's gone, hooray."
Yay.
Actually, that wasn't true. I ended up with hydrogen sulfide. And that's because, remember, well, not remember if you don't already know this, but methanogens and hydrogen sulfide bacteria are both using hydrogen as a substrate. So no matter what comes back positive on your test, you likely also have hydrogen, right? Because it's there and it's feeding the other two. That was a lot of information. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to pull out from that.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. I think what I would like to discuss is, and maybe this is getting a little nerdy for this, but I would love to know your thoughts about it, because this is what I love to do anyways, just get nerdy. So I'll tell you, I work with doctors who do SIBO testing all the time. I will also tell you, I personally have never run a SIBO test. So, and please tell me, you know, your thoughts, your honest thoughts on this, because I've been practicing now for, you know, over 10 years. And as I was first learning, and SIBO was kind of coming into, you know, the clinical world, you know, it was, you know, the SIBO testing, which I'm sure in 10 years is very different than it was then, but it's, you know, it's not accurate. It's only about 50%, so you get false positives, false negatives, and then you know, it confuses the client, and, you know, the list goes on and on with these tests. What I have done over the years is I will first look at symptoms. Second, I might do a low FODMAP to see if that helps with symptoms, and so I want to make sure, and please give any information on this that you want. But low FODMAP is, you know, a lot of people like, I've done low FODMAP and it was great, but then it comes back. I'm like, it never went away. Low FODMAP is going to help with symptoms, right? So if you need help with symptoms, then low FODMAP can be beneficial for a period of time. But those are all beneficial bacteria beneficial fibers that we need to feed our bacteria. These are important foods. We don't want to keep them out of our diet. So don't ever think that this low FODMAP diet is a fix-all, because it's definitely not. But it's kind of diagnostic. Not that I diagnose, right? But it can help us to understand if you are feeling better, then you know, you're probably struggling with SIBO. So then, you know, to take it a step further, you know, I do a lot of gut zoomers, right? GI panels. And so we can look at the hydrogen producing and the methane producing bacteria. I don't know about the hydrogen sulfide, but we can see they're elevated, and that's not diagnostic either, but you can see when something is elevated and is probably correlating with the symptoms that you have, right? Symptoms come first, and then you're looking at the labs and you start putting everything together. So any thoughts that you have?
Yes, and I love that you brought this up, because this is really, really important, and I do talk about this in my practice as well. So I don't quote unquote treat to a test, right? That's just one data point. And I agree, they're not 100% accurate. Also, you have to ask yourself, did the person do the prep diet right? Did they breathe into the dang tube the correct way? You know, all these kind of questions. So when I get that information, I'm using it as one data point in the whole tangled spaghetti of the person that I'm looking at, right?
That's such a great way to put it.
And so it's one way to start, you know, peeling away some of the layers, and it's good to have that data. But to your point, I have helped people overcome SIBO without doing a single SIBO breath test. So, you know, I love that you are thinking outside of the box that way.
Cool.
A lot of my clients, though, like to have data. They're just data driven and they want to know. So that's kind of like, you know, respecting where the client is coming from as well. To your point about FODMAP diets, oh my goodness, I've seen people come to me who've been on low FODMAP diets for years, and they're highly nutrient depleted now. Especially as women, we know we need to have those really important cruciferous vegetables for detoxing excess estrogen and all sorts of things, right? It provides bulk for the stool. lowers inflammation and cholesterol levels and all these kind of good things. So we don't want to be without these healthy fibers for a long period of time. And to your point, the low FODMAP diet can help you tease out whether or not SIBO may be at play. And again, the low FODMAP diet is something that's like reducing your cruciferous intake, garlic, onions, also sugar, alcohols, things like that, right? That become triggers for people who have these bacterial overgrowths. But yeah, I don't ever see a diet as a long-term fix-all. It's not a cure. It can, help you have a decrease or reduce some of your symptoms for a temporary amount of time. But I'm always looking at the person and trying to figure out how can we diversify your diet. That's always going to be the goal in the end, so that you're getting all the key nutrients you need to heal yourself.
Yep.
And I'll just kind of give a plug here for Dr. Neurology Kobe's biphasic diet. I really like that one because she does include small amounts of cruciferous. It's just a matter of portion size and food stacking and things like that.
Okay.
And to your point as well, stool testing, I'll use that in my practice. I love the gut zoomer as well. I use the GI map quite often. These will pick up things like if there are, those 3 big hitters for the SIBO type bacteria, if they're in the large colon. Remember, a stool test is just testing what's happening really in the large colon, but it can definitely give you clues about what may be migrating up into the small intestine.
Right.
So I often use that as another data point, like I said. But yeah, it's really important to look at the person in front of you. Like, what is happening in real time right now for this person? How does that line up with testing? Sure, we can use that as information, but it's not the end all be all.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I land on that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I want to go to the causes of SIBO. I think that there is the thought in the conventional medical world, well, I think maybe even in the functional holistic world, that SIBO is the condition, where what I have been trained is actually the case is it's a secondary infection. It's not a primary infection. So there's something deeper going on that we need to uncover that is pushing this SIBO to go into the wrong place and proliferate, right?
Yes. Yes. So root causes, it's funny because in the conventional world, when you're talking about SIBO, the most popular one is they'll say about a food poisoning, and that's a very common cause. So say you went out and you went to the buffet or you had the salad bar or whatever, you ended up with food poisoning, and then like a few months later you're like, oh my gosh, now I have this chronic bloating all the time, right? So that could be a clue. And then your body's creating sort of different antibodies and putting you in the situation where SIBO starts to bloom, right? But some other very common root causes are chronic stress, because like we talked about, it's turning off your migrating motor complex, and you're not getting that good sweeping cleansing wave and removing that bacteria from the small intestine into the large colon where it should be and then excreted, right? Antibiotic use. So say you had a root canal or an ear infection or a bladder infection, like, you get chronic UTIs and you're always on antibiotics. This could be a root cause for SIBO, and oftentimes why some people will relapse, because they went through a SIBO protocol, but then suddenly they got some other infection, took an antibiotic, and then they're back in the SIBO boat. PPIs, this is a huge reason, which we could probably talk about all day, right?
A whole other show, right? Maybe we think about doing that.
But just in general, PPIs are acid suppressants. They're really good at what they do, whether it's pharmaceutical or the kind you just are popping over the counter every day after every meal, like Rolaids and things like that. And they're suppressing your stomach acid. And in the long run, when that happens, you're turning off your hormone signaling to produce enzymes and bile and all of these things that help you keep bacteria overgrowths at bay, right? SSRIs, which we already hit on. Another really big one I see in my practice is having no gallbladder.
Yes.
Or
I was
just
thinking that.
Production. Yeah. Doctors, unfortunately, surgeons will say, oh, you don't need your gallbladder, let's take it out. The poor gallbladder is often the victim of what's going on in the liver, so like go upstream and see what's going on. The the bile from the gallbladder is super important for a number of reasons, right? We know that it helps emulsify fats, so we're breaking down those good healthy fats from our diet and from our vitamins. It acts as a natural antimicrobial in the small intestine, so when that's not present, those things get out of balance. It's also going to help, conjugate and hang on to some toxins so that you can help them get them out of your body. So it's really important to have your gallbladder. And unfortunately, I see a ton of people who come to my practice who had their gallbladder removed. We're never given advice on how to help support healthy bile flow.
It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's another huge conversation. What are some other things? Surgery or scar tissue buildup. Moving organs around, rerouting, like in the case of, what do you call it? It just went out of my mind. When you're having the bypass surgery and things like that.
Oh, like the GI,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the reconnecting of different intestinal parts. I'm forgetting what the word is. Some sort of bypass. And here's one that is near and dear to my heart that is not really recognized by doctors is the connection between a TBI or a brain injury and SIBO.
Yep.
Because we know again that these things are connected.
Concussion.
Your brain is also, has that permeable membrane, very similar to a gut membrane, and yes, very connected that way as well. And so those are just some of the top ones that I see in my practice, but there are many more.
Yeah, I think the things that I would add to that would be toxins, right? Mycotoxins, environmental toxins, metals, things that the body is holding on to, and there are too many things it's dealing with at one time, and so these microbes can continue to proliferate.
Yes. I do see that in my practice. Heavy metals, environmental pesticides.
Yep.
Mold toxicity is another really big one. We have to address that. Parasites can be one.
Yep.
And also another thing in the medication category that I didn't mention was birth control pills. Can also be a root cause.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Something I need to do real quick, I'm not in the habit of doing this, and I need to do this, is talk about our sponsor, because we have an amazing sponsor.
Yeah.
So let me do this real quick. I'm going to get this together at some point and be really cool with it, but right now I'm not yet. So I'm going to pull this up and see if it'll come up for me for everybody to see. So we have as our sponsor right now, well, now I don't know how to find you, Jen, but we'll come back. We have Susan Drake of Mountain Medical Concepts, and she has some amazing lines for practitioners. One of them is a peptide line by a company called New BioAge, and they have gut tides. And so we're talking about gut and gut health and how important some peptides can be for people to move past whatever gut issue they're struggling with, right? It can be something like SIBO, it can be autoimmune, you name it. And these peptides can really benefit people as they are working through the process of healing and repair. So if you are a practitioner out there and you want to reach out to Susan, of course you can go to this QR code and reach out to her. We've been using New BioAge. It's a great company. Their products are great. And we've got to be so careful with, they're fairly easily accessible, but not always a good quality. So that's the stuff that we want to make sure that people are aware of the quality of the stuff that they're taking, putting in their body. And New BioAge is just a great company, and I appreciate Susan a ton for what she's doing. So thank you, Susan, and now Jen, there you are, yay, found you. Okay. So so now I don't know where to go. So I think one of the things that we can talk about, actually I know what I want to talk about. I want to hear a story. So it's my favorite thing is when we have great stories, great client and patient successes, because they're so relatable and it gives people hope. When you're sitting in the middle of the struggle of pain and discomfort, whatever that comes from, knowing that you can come out of it is so key. So give us some good stories.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll share one. This is sort of a more recent one that I had earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
Great young woman. She was in her 30s, professional, kind of a go getter, working out, doing her CrossFit, being very social, going out with friends, and just all around amazing woman. And she came to me, and one of her main complaints was, I want to lose a few more pounds. But the bigger issue is actually that she was having to rush to the bathroom 10 to 12 times a day
Oh
because she was
yeah.
having crazy diarrhea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, we need to work on your gut. We're also going to help reset your nervous system here because it's being overworked. And let's talk about what an appropriate exercise routine might be for you so that you're not having that constant physiological stressor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what the social scene looks like for you. Maybe let's reduce this alcohol for a little bit, right? And calm down your nervous system and start healing your gut. We worked together for several months, tweaking some of her food and her diet, really talking about putting herself in what I like to call a healing bubble so that she could really take care of herself and make herself a
I
priority.
love that. Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
kind of neglecting herself that
Yep.
way. And then, and it actually kind of sparked some new things. Like she ended up changing her job and things like that as well. So
Huh.
really kind of diving in deeper to some of that mental stuff, some of the things that she was hanging on to from previous things in her life, some trauma and things like that. So it's not always just your small intestine, right? It's so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
But after a few months of working together and addressing this overgrowth, it turned out that she had very high hydrogen levels, and likely also some hydrogen sulfide there as well. And so really addressing that, supporting her genetics, because she was, very, we're all unique in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So really
Mm-hmm.
being mindful of like, who is this person I'm talking to, and like, what is her environment and what are her genetics and family history.
Yep.
And kind of putting that all together for her, doing lots of journaling and things like that. And eventually she came back to me, oh my gosh, I hit my target weight. I'm only going to the bathroom once or twice, and my stool is formed. I'm able to go out with my friends and, have, eat the food that I used to like
Mm-hmm.
before. And really just kind of changed her whole life. It was a huge transformation, and I'm just so proud of the work she put in. But that's one of my favorite cases right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. It's never easy, right? It's always,
Never easy.
yeah. It's
And it's
a
not linear.
exactly. I had someone on. It's been a couple of years ago now, but I love the way that she explained it. She was like, it's like a river, right? You got to get to the other side, but the river can be really wild and crazy. So you got to get through the
Yeah.
river to get to the other side to get to your goal,
Yes.
right? And so it can be a journey. It can be opening. It can be really hard. It can hurt, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally. It
Yes.
can be all of the things. And I'm also finding that people are afraid of symptoms. So they already have the symptoms that they're struggling with. But when we go into what might be called a healing crisis or other symptoms that are different from the ones that they're used to, it can be a scary place to be. And so it's sort of talking through that, knowing that the body's doing what it's supposed to do. And my other favorite thing that I think is really important that I will say a billion, million, billion times is the body, its main goal is to protect us and to keep us alive. It is not dysfunctional. It is doing what it knows to do to protect us and keep us alive. So we have to then come in and understand what it's trying to tell us so we can help it do its job and manage us,
Yes.
essentially. Yeah?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't agree more. Symptoms are information,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
just a prompting for us to slow down and
Mm-hmm.
kind of sit with ourselves, because many of us don't even have a quiet moment during the day until our head hits the pillow, right?
Yeah.
And even then, some of us are having racing mind or trying to
Mm-hmm.
watch Netflix to fall asleep. Like,
That
there's
doesn't
no
work.
quiet time. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no quiet time.
Right.
And I think that's really key for, especially as alternative practitioners, is creating that safe space for people to feel like they can express some of those things that they've been holding on to, or maybe that they weren't even aware of, so that we're
Mm-hmm.
good question askers, right?
Yes.
Detectives.
Yeah.
And trying to peel away some of that, whether it's trauma or, negative
Mm-hmm.
self-talk or whatever it is that's
Yep.
keeping them stuck. Really just telling people not to outsource their intuition, right? Just like
Mm-hmm.
check in with yourself, have a
Yep.
gut check. What's going on here?
Yep.
What do I need today, and how do I get it?
Yeah. And I love your point about the negative self-talk. I had, I mean, this happens all the time. I used to do this. I still have to catch myself. But I had a woman, I think it was just yesterday, who said, I was in the sun, I'm terrible. And for one, I went, the sun's not terrible, but I don't ever want to hear you say you're terrible again. Doesn't do anybody any good. So this negative self-talk just perpetuates the junk, right? It's the physical, it's the mental and emotional that will manifest as the physical if we're not careful about that. And I saw this, I think it's so personal to me because my mom was always beating herself up. She was the sweetest, most God-fearing, neat woman, right? But she just had low self-esteem and was always talking terrible about herself. And I would have to tell her, you have to stop. And so I would do the same thing. So I have to manage my own brain to not sit there and say, why'd you do such a stupid thing? Why are you so stupid? Because for one, nobody's perfect.
It's a lot of work to rewire those old pathways for sure. I mean, I always tell my clients this, your cells hear everything you say.
Yes.
Yes.
It's so true.
And I'll just say, coming from, I call myself, I like to say that I'm overcoming perfectionism, right? Like I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I say this a lot in my practice too, even with like going through a protocol. Like, let's avoid perfectionism. That just drives further anxiety. So, let's trust and lean into our body's innate ability to self-heal. If we can give it the right tools in the space and some quiet time, it'll do its job.
It will. Even in the most scary circumstances, the body has the ability to heal itself. And I think it's really important to remember that, and important to, so yes, we need to find our team, we need to find our people who can help us and who can guide us, but we also have to remember to go inside, go in, listen, pay attention, know that you know your body the best. And kind of going back to, sort of full circle to what we talked about originally, was not letting somebody tell you that there's something wrong with you, not letting somebody tell you that you need a drug. It might be beneficial for a period of time, right? So I'm not saying we don't need drugs, but I'm just saying we have to listen to ourselves and know that we know our bodies best. And I think so often what we hear is, okay, well, you just need an antidepressant instead of like you said earlier. And it's really frustrating. And being your own advocate, I had my own health experience as well, where I had to learn to be my own advocate, and it put me through all of the modalities, right? And it's what brought me here today, just like with you, is I know so much more because of the experience that I went through, and I know how to empathize because it's not fun and it's not easy. And
I think that's huge. Being able to see and hear whoever's sitting in front of you and have them feel seen and heard, because as you know, probably people are coming to your practice who have not had that experience before.
And they comment on it all the time. They're like, nobody listens. And it's going back to the way conventional medicine is, it's not the doctor's fault, right? It's that we depend on insurance, and the doctors have to do what the insurance companies say, and so you get 10 minutes, as opposed to someone like us. We sit and we take the time, and we want to listen, and we want to hear, and we want to get into the nitty-gritty. And I think that's what's necessary to allow someone to learn their body and how to manage their body, and how to create this place where when they leave the nest, to, for lack of a better word, right, that they go in for the rest of their lives with the ability to understand what their body's telling them and how to manage it. And then that just moves on into their families, right, to their kids and their kids' kids, and you can take it on as far as you want to take it. But it's just so important.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think part of our mission really in this life, whatever ailment the person is coming to us with, and what we have to do to kind of overcome that, is the messaging of like empowering them to make decisions for themselves, listening to their intuition, asking questions, pushing back when they need to, and being their own best advocates. I couldn't agree with that more. Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, this was really great. I'm so grateful for the conversation, for what you're doing, the fact that you're specializing in this, because it is so needed and so important. So I love learning from you, and I hope that people reach out to you. So where can they find you?
Yeah, the best place is the SIBOcoach.com. That's the SIBOcoach.com. And that's kind of my hub. You can contact me there, learn more about my story, grab your freebies, take a quiz like, do I have SIBO? And then my program information is there as well. This has been such an honor and a pleasure. I appreciate you, Nikki.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. We'll do another one, and maybe we do. I mean, I talk about PPIs some, or acid blockers and things like that, but I think it's a really important topic to dig into. So maybe we
I think so
look
too.
at doing something
It's
like
so
that.
common and overused.
It's awful. So I'm going to do this one more time, and I'm going to pull up Susan's information, so we can have that up there for anybody who wants to check it out. Maybe if I minimize it. I should have done this before we got on, but we were running so late that sometimes things just don't work the way we want them to, but that's pretty good. We'll just kind of leave it like that for now, or not. There we go. Okay, good enough. Okay, so anyway, we will have all of Jen's information in all of the places, right? All of the social media, all of the podcast sites, that kind of thing. So you can find her, reach out to her, ask her questions. The goal of any of us as practitioners is to be a resource. We're here to serve. We're here to love on you and give you whatever we can to help you to move forward in whatever your goals are. So it's fun to have people like Jen in your back pocket to reach out to and get some help from. So of course you can find me tastelifenutrition.com. You can fill out a free assessment on there to see if there's ways that I might be able to help you, or do I know somebody who can help you, because I know a lot of really cool people who do a lot of really cool work. So and then we're here every Thursday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live here on the amazing KUHSdenver.com. And then we are on your favorite podcast site. So let me know if there's anything that I can do for you. Of course, I'm here to serve as well. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jen. Give me just 1 second. Do you have a second?